Santa go ahead and start the recording?
We're starting.
Okay.
All right, gentlemen, we are on. Good morning, board members, Mr. Edwards. This is an electronic teleconference call meeting this is March the 31st, 2014. This meeting was properly noticed on the Board of Barber Examiners website and the Department of Commerce and Insurance's website in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. And this meeting is being done electronically in accordance with TCA 8-44-108. At this time, I will read the determination of necessity into the record at this time, and at the conclusion of my reading the determination of necessity, I will need a roll call vote from the board members to approve the determination of necessity, and then we will move into the subject matter of the hearing. So, with that, this is the determination of necessity for the March 31st, 2014 meeting of the Tennessee Board of Barber Examiners. Tennessee Code Annotated, Section 8-44-108 requires that a governing body which conducts a meeting electronically and without a physical quorum present at the location of the meeting make a determination of necessity as defined by TCA 8-44-108 subsection A3 regarding the meeting. That such determination and the facts and circumstances upon which it was based must be included in the minutes of the meeting, and that the governing body, in this case the Board of Barber Examiners, must file the determination of necessity with the Office of the Secretary of State no later than 2 working days after the meeting. The operation of the Tennessee Board of Barber Examiners is governed by TCA 62-3-101 and subsequent sections. The board has determined that there is a necessity for a board meeting via electronic means prior to its next regularly scheduled meeting on April 21st, 2014. The facts and circumstances supporting the necessity of the meeting by the board on March 31st, 2014 are as follows. Number 1, necessity exists for this meeting to be held electronically because the members of the board participating in the meeting are spread geographically throughout the state of Tennessee. Further, the participating board members are unable to be physically present for this board meeting due to a relatively short notice period of less than 2 weeks. Number 2, on March 24th, 2014, pursuant to TCA 4-5-320C and TCA 4-5-322, subsection D1B of the Uniform Administrative Procedures Act, or the UAPA, the board voted to summarily suspend the master barber license of Wilman Wayne Edwards, license number 17552. Number 3, the UAPA requires that the board offer the licensee an opportunity for an informal conference with the board within 7 days of the summary suspension to determine whether the public health, safety, and welfare requires that the board's summary suspension remain in place pending a formal hearing under the UAPA for the revocation or other disciplinary action against Mr. Edwards' license. Number 4, on March 24th, 2014, the board offered Mr. Edwards the opportunity to participate in an informal conference regarding the summary suspension of his master barber license, and Mr. Edwards expressed his desire to participate in such an informal conference. Number 5, in light of the board's finding that the public health, safety, and welfare required the summary suspension of Mr. Edwards' master barber license on March 24, 2014, and the requirement under the UAPA to offer Mr. Edwards an informal conference regarding his suspension within 7 days of such suspension, the Tennessee Board of Barber Examiners hereby finds that the necessity exists to hold an electronic meeting by telephone on March 31st, 2014 to determine whether Mr. Edwards' license summary suspension should remain in place pending a formal hearing under the UAPA for revocation or other action against his master barber license. Gentlemen, that concludes the determination of necessity. At this time, I will need a roll call to approve the determination of necessity for this meeting, and Mr. Loring, we'll start with you.
J.B. Loring, and I approve the meeting.
Mr. High?
Yes, Larry High, and I'll approve the meeting also.
Mr. Collins,
Yes, this is Donald Collins, and I also approve the meeting.
Mr. Gillihan.
This is Ron Gillihan, and I also approve the meeting.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appears the vote is unanimous to approve the determination of necessity for this meeting. Therefore, we will proceed with the electronic meeting at this time. Board members and Mr. Edwards, the purpose of today's meeting is for the board to consider whether the public health, safety, and welfare requires that the summary suspension of Mr. Edwards' master barber license, as approved by the board on March 24th, 2014, should remain in place until and unless we are able to schedule a formal hearing for disciplinary action against Mr. Edwards' license. I wish to stress for the record that today's hearing is not a determination on the merits. This is not to determine whether Mr. Edwards did in fact commit the acts and conduct of which he stands accused in the complaint. It is merely based on the board's prior determination and its consideration of the matter to this point, whether the board wishes to leave in place the summary suspension that is now in place until and unless we can get to a formal hearing. At this time, I will open the floor up for any discussion of the matter, and Mr. Loring, we'll start with you.
I have no questions. J.B. Loring, I have no questions.
Mr. High.
Yes, Larry High. What I would like to see is for them to come in for a formal hearing. I think we can get more done if they come in for a formal hearing.
Okay. Mr. Collins.
Yes, this is Donald Collins, and according to the information that we already have, I just agreed that we should have a formal meeting and address the gentleman in person.
Okay. And Mr. Gillihan.
This is Ron Gillihan, and I agree with the other board members. I believe that a formal hearing is warranted.
Okay. Well, at this time then, I would request a vote, and either a yes or no vote to leave in place the summary suspension of Mr. Edwards' license until the formal hearing is issued. And by way of explanation, if the board votes to leave the summary suspension in place, a yes vote will mean that the board has made a finding that the public health, safety, and welfare requires that the summary suspension remain in place pending a formal hearing. If the board votes no, that the summary suspension should be dissolved, then in that case, Mr. Edwards' license would then revert back to good standing, and he would be eligible once again to practice barbering pending a formal hearing. So at this time, we will do this by roll call vote, and recall that a yes vote means that the board member who makes the vote wishes to leave the summary suspension in place pending formal hearing. A no vote is to dissolve the summary suspension and allow Mr. Edwards to practice barbering until a formal hearing is scheduled. We'll start with you, Mr. Loring.
J.B. Loring, and I vote yes.
Mr. High.
Larry High, and I vote yes.
Mr. Collins.
Donald Collins, and I vote yes.
Mr. Gillihan.
Ron Gillihan, and I vote yes.
Thank you, gentlemen. It appears that we have a unanimous 4-0 vote in favor of leaving the summary suspension of Mr. Edwards' license in place based on the board's finding that the public health, safety, and welfare requires that the suspension remain in place pending a formal hearing. At this time, based on my prior discussions with Mr. Edwards, it's my understanding that he wishes to address the board at this time briefly regarding, as I understand it, a potential disposition of this matter. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Edwards, and you may address the board at this time and tell them whatever you would like to tell them.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just would like to apologize for my actions. I would definitely just like to definitely apologize, and just would like to see if the growth board would agree to just a 2-year revocation or whatever, so I won't have to do a hearing, just 2 years, and then I'll be able to apply again to be a master barber instructor again.
Now, Mr. Edwards, just so that we're clear for the record, is it your request of the board that at the conclusion of this 2-year period or whatever other period the board may potentially approve, that
Yes.
you would have the right to reapply, but that you would not be guaranteed reinstatement, and it would be up to whatever board is in place at that time to vote yes or no on allowing you to have your license back? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, board members, at this time, it appears, although it's not exactly 100% how these things usually go, that Mr. Edwards has tendered what amounts to an offer of potential settlement of this matter without a formal hearing. Based on his request, the offer before the board is to agree to a voluntary revocation of his master barber license, and it would be for 2 years from the date that he signs the consent order and that it's accepted by the board. And then at the conclusion of that 2 years, he would have the right to reapply for his license, but either this board or whatever board is in place at the time would not be required to grant him a license. The only requirement is that he would be allowed to reapply. So at this time, I will open the floor for debate and or discussion on Mr. Edwards' statement. And Mr. Loring, we'll start with you.
Actually, before a vote like this, I really need more information. All we have is allegations, and is Mr. Edwards admitting to the allegations, or does he deny the allegations?
Mr. Edwards, question is to you.
Yes, I'm admitting the allegations, and like I said, I apologize for my action. That's why I apologize, because I'm admitting to the allegations.
Well, Mr. Loring, on that basis, Mr. Edwards appears to have admitted to what was set forth to the board in the summary suspension order, which was signed last Monday. So,
Okay.
So based on his own admission, it appears that the sole question before the board is whether, if the board wishes to entertain Mr. Edwards' proposal, whether it should be 2 years before he has a right to reapply again, or whether it should be more than 2 years. So,
Okay. Have we ever had a problem out of Mr. Edwards?
no, Mr. Loring, a search of his licensing file reveals no prior complaints and no prior disciplinary action.
Well, of course, this board is not for putting somebody out of business or out of a job. And with a clean prior record, my vote will be to accept his recommendation or his proposal of 2-year suspension and then reapply.
Okay, Mr. Loring, just to be clear, is that a suspension or a revocation? Because his proposal was to agree to a 2-year revocation.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, 2-year revocation, and at the end of 2 years, if he's clean for that 2 years, then he reapplies.
Okay. Mr. High, to you.
Yes, Larry High. Yes, I definitely agree. This 2-year revocation, that would be sufficient enough, because he did admit being guilty to it, and I think this 2 years would correct him, and I don't think he would do that again. And like you said, we haven't had any previous problems out of him, so I would say this 2-year revocation, that would be sufficient enough.
All right. Mr. Collins.
Yes, this is Donald Collins. I just hope that Mr. Edwards understands the severity of this issue. And, of course, I do agree with J.B. and Mr. High on the 2-year revocation and then reapply. But I'm praying and hoping that, Mr. Edwards, that you yourself realize how serious this is. And a person in your position as an instructor, I'm hoping that you'll be able to learn something from this and grow from this and continue to do well in this industry. So I agree with Mr. I as well as Mr. Lauren on the 2-year revocation.
Mr. Gillihan, to you.
This is Ron Gillihan, and I did have a question for you, Ms. Whitaker. Do the financial penalties of the previous officer for consent order stand as well?
Well, that is that actually was not part of what Mr. Edwards proposed. I think it really was a matter of trying to resolve the matter to sort of get his license off the streets and off the books for whatever time period the board agreed, and in the interest of saving the board the time and expense of a formal hearing and Mr. Edwards' potential inability to make it to a formal hearing to maybe defend himself in person. So the board did, at the consent order stage previously, authorize a civil penalty. That is not what's on the table now, and so I will leave it to the board members to say yay or nay, but at this time, it looks like we've got 3 votes in favor of just the revocation, and you can certainly vote as you wish and go from there, or agree with the other board members. I'm certainly not going to tell you how to vote, Mr. Gillihan, but that's kind of where we are at this point.
I agree with the other members that we're not here to try to put someone out of business. We're simply trying to protect the public's interest and the health, safety, and welfare of the public. So my vote in this matter would be as with the other board members.
All right. Then at this time, just to be clear for the record, Mr. Edwards has proposed a 2-year revocation of his master barber license effective as of the date that the order is signed and accepted by the board, and that 2 years from the date of the revocation that he will have the right to reapply for the reinstatement of his master barber license, but that the board will have no obligation to grant him the license solely because he reapplies, and they will have the discretion to make a determination as to his reinstatement as they would any other previously revoked license. So if at this time, if that accurately reflects the board members' understanding, we'll go for a roll call vote on that proposal, and we'll start with you, Mr. Loring, yes or no?
J.B. Loring, yes.
Mr. High?
Larry High, yes.
Mr. Collins?
Donald Collins, yes.
And Mr. Gillihan?
Ron Gillihan, yes.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Appears we have a unanimous vote in favor of Mr. Edwards' proposal for a 2-year voluntary revocation of his license. That concludes the discussion portion of this meeting. Mr. Edwards, I will speak with you by phone when we conclude the meeting here to let you know how I will be getting the board's order to you. And
Okay.
when you receive it, take a look at it, and if you have any questions, please feel free to call me. But otherwise, you'll need to sign and return it to me as soon as possible, and
Right.
and then we'll go from there. Do you have any questions?
No, I just want to say, like I said, I apologize just for, the wasting the time of the boys. I just wanted to get it over with so my family, so my wife can get over it, and so we can move on. We definitely have moved on. I've apologized. I'm apologize to the owner of the school and all that. So just to put it on record, it's very apologetic. And like the guy was saying, I am definitely learning from it and definitely moving forward. And I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. At this time, we'll need a roll call vote to adjourn, starting with Mr. Loring.
J.B. Loring, I vote yes to adjourn.
Mr. High?
Larry High, I vote yes to adjourn.
Mr. Collins?
Yes, Donald Collins, and I vote yes to adjourn.
And Mr. Gillihan?
What call?
Ron Gillihan, yes to adjourn.
Thank you, gentlemen. This concludes today's board meeting. I appreciate everyone being here and on time and helping the meeting to go so smoothly. If any of the board members individually have any questions, please feel free to contact Ms. Gamusio, and she'll try to answer them. But other than that, we stand adjourned.
Chris, I'd just like to express my thoughts. You have handled this in a very fine fashion. We appreciate all the work that you do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Loring. That's most gracious of you. And all right, gentlemen, we stand adjourned. Everybody back to work.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you,
All right,
gentlemen.
take
All
care.
right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.